Maintain the equilibrium. When I talk about being optimistic, I maintain the equilibrium. Emotionally, physically, because when losing the equilibrium, then you get agitated, and you get agitated in vain.
G'day, Anthony James here for The Regeneration, your ad-free, freely available, listener-supported podcast exploring how people are regenerating the systems and stories we live by. Welcome to a series within the series, from Guatemala, Central America. 3 stories from 3 men I admire most in the world, each different but related, each from a different generation, and each navigating the last couple of decades differently since I spent time with them. Back then, those few years I lived in the municipality of Fray Bartolome de las Casas in the central province of Alta Verapaz were, needless to say, formative for me. I never imagined I'd be back, much less able to share this with you. This is the story of a place too in that sense, a place that's been through the worst of things and some of the best of human endeavours as well, offering us all some hard-won wisdom on how to transcend the former and tend the latter. Even achieve some amazing stuff at times, but perhaps above all, how to live well regardless of those outcomes. First up then, it's a privilege to share my conversation with Don Ceferino de Paz González. Don Cef was Mayor of Fray when I arrived offering my services, a gringo with, at that stage, no organisational or financial backing. I'll never forget my first sight of this diminutive yet powerful figure striding towards me under broad sombrero, people everywhere, beaming as he shook my hand. Aquí hay espacio para todos. Here, there is space for everybody. Don Cef had not long been elected, only a few years after the peace accords that formally ended a bloody decades-long war. He was then part of the political party that emerged from the guerrilla resistance. A mere boy when he joined that resistance, he dodged death, rose through the ranks, and then in peacetime became mayor, not once, but twice. 21 years since I saw him last, we met at his home in Fray. He'd hardly changed, still looking sprightly at age 80, and generously, this proud, articulate, still optimistic elder was up for a chat, full, frank, and open. We sat out on the patio late morning. The humidity and heat were on the rise amidst the lush green of these traditional Mayan tropical lowlands. It had been raining plenty, and sure enough, rained again soon after we started. It doesn't rain softly in these parts either, but nor are there any assurances it would stop, so we just ran with it. It does back off though after a few minutes on each occasion, and somehow, as the air clears, the sound of Don Cef's voice resonates all the more as we drift deeper into personal terrain in the back half of our chat, and at the end, he agrees to pick up the guitar to take us out. Today's episode is also a tribute to my late mentor and mate, systems thinking pioneer and much-loved legend, Professor Frank Fisher, on the 82nd anniversary of his birth. Previous guests commemorating this occasion include the late Hazel Henderson and the still thriving Alan Savory, Charlie Massey, Paul Hawken and Chloe Maximin. I couldn't be happier to mark this year with Don Ceferino, all the more given it just occurred to me I met both men within months of each other back at the turn of the century. What an impact they had on the life of this searching young fella. You just never know when the gifts turn up. Thanks again to Dana Scott over in Baltimore, a Peace Corps volunteer in Fray during the latter part of my time there, for so generously translating and speaking the Spanish in English. I'm glad you can join me in Fray for this one, with Don Ceferino de Paz González. Muchas gracias, Don Cef.
Gracias a ti.
Thanks very much, Don Cef. Thank you. It's a pleasure to do this with you, and perhaps we can start with an introduction of yourself.
Mi nombre es Ceferino de Paz González.
My name is Ceferino de Paz González, 80 years old, of Maya Achi ethnic group, and this neighborhood is called Barrio Los Laureles in the municipality of Fray Bartolome de las Casas in the department of Alta Verapaz. Let's start at the very beginning, or the closest we can get to your ancestors, the Achi culture. What part of Guatemala does it come from, and how many generations back do you know? Well, Rabinal is located in the department of Alta Verapaz. Well, the Maya Achi means man. He is not afraid to die. So that's what the word Achi means. The ancestors, well, they fought many wars with the Quiche. So the Quiches could not advance toward the area of the department of Baja Verapaz. That is why Achi is spoken there. So it didn't go any further. But later on, Pocomchi is spoken, which is a derivative of Achi and part of Quechua. Now, there are three languages that are reduced into one because there is a lot of similarities among the languages. For example, Pocom, with the Mayan-speaking Achi, borrows from Quechua. So they are purely Mayan areas. How many languages do you speak? Well, my mother tongue is Achi. Later I learned Pocom. Quechua, which is very extensive in this area, covering the part of the department of Petén, Coban, Alta Verapaz, part of Quiche, and Purula, which is also Baja Verapaz. And the rain is coming. How lovely. And you talked about the meaning of the culture's name, the name Achi. Have you thought much about death in your life? Well, it's a life. For example, if we go to the root, well, I haven't thought about death that much. I've thought about the struggles that must be fought to liberate oneself from oppression, from the repression that the Maya people have lived under for many years. So I haven't thought about death that much. I'm quite optimistic. I think more about moving forward than thinking about death. And your grandparents lived in Rabinal too? Yes, my grandparents lived in Rabinal. My father was called Lorenzo de Paz Juquej, an authentic Maya. He was secretary of the PGT, Guatemalan Labor Party, which was structured in 1948 during the government of Dr. Juan José Arevalo Bermejo. My mother, well, was a faithful follower of the party, of the PGT. Okay, and let's talk more about this. You were very young at that time, right? At that time, in 48, I was about 6 years old, more or less. More or less, because in 54 I was 10. What do you remember from that time? Well, in 54, there was the overthrow of Colonel Jacobo Arbenz Guzman, who, to date, is the only military man who touched the interests of American imperialism, because the American intelligence company, CIA, had taken over the best lands on the south coast and in the east, which they occupied for the banana plantations, the fruit company. The colonel came then, who was the one who followed up after Dr. Juan José Arevalo Bermejo, and the empire didn't like it. And they tried, through the OAS, to plan to overthrow Colonel Jacobo Arbenz Guzman. He was very, very, very intelligent, a very astute man, but he didn't have this experience in the field of war. And the people who came out and shouted at him to withdraw so there wouldn't be more bloodshed, because the American Empire and the OAS prepared troops in El Salvador with airplanes crewed by mercenaries, and they prepared to enter the department of Chiquimula, indiscriminately bombing the civilian population. There weren't, for example, troops or soldiers, but it was civilian people. To cause fear, they bombed the houses of the civilian population. In Gualan, they almost exterminated them. And that's how the doctor, Colonel Jacobo Angel Guzman, withdrew and took asylum in Mexico. And it continues. So then they placed a puppet who was called Carlos Castillo Armas, who was the puppet of the American Empire, and he failed. He followed up on part of the strategies that Colonel Jacobo Angel Guzman was carrying out, and the American Empire didn't like it. So they sent him out to be killed themselves. And the persecution against those of the PGT, the leaders, and all the selective killings, and everything continues there. Already in the year 1960, the other movements emerged, such as the April 12th movement, which came from the students of the University of San Carlos, and the October 20th movement, and the November 13th movement, which, strangely enough, in Guatemala, because that was led by the army itself, for example, Commander Torcillos Lima, John Sosa. They were trained in the School of the Americas for counterinsurgency. However, seeing the injustice that was being committed against the population, they took the decision to rebel, and they turned to defend the poor people. We believed it was a matter of hours, or a matter of weeks, or months, or years, but we never believed it would extend the full 36 years. Of course. But, well, at the time I joined the guerrilla war at the age of 16. There was no other alternative. They were chasing us to kill us. We had to arm ourselves and defend ourselves. Yes. And what happened to your father? My father, he fell into the hands of the army in 54. Immediately. After the colonel's overthrow was when the persecution against the leaders began. And he was the secretary of the PGT. They captured him. They didn't capture my grandfather, but they did my father. So they took him to the Department of Salama, to the military detachment, and there they tortured him, beat him all up. And they went and dumped him on the side of the road, pretending that he was already dead. But no, he endured a lot, and they notified us. So we went to pick him up. We healed him with medicinal plants and everything. But they broke the pulmonary arteries, and he was left with a dry cough. He lived a couple more years, but then, as a result of the beatings they gave him, he died. What year did he die? He died around 1970, maybe. I remember it was in the 70s. I imagine you got angry. Yes, precisely, practically. Seeing the injustice that was being committed against our family and everything, I made the determination to seek revenge. And precisely I was 16 when I joined the guerrilla war. I operated for 2 years in the urban command, but 2.5 years, more or less, from 60 to 62.5. A moment came when there were already many casualties of our cells, of our comrades. So the leadership, with a bit of skill, took us out to the Sierra de las Minas. What happened next? In the Sierra de las Minas, there we managed to structure the FARC, the rebel armed forces, or revolutionary armed forces, as we wanted to call it. And there were 3 movements: the April 12th movement, the October 20th movement, and the November 13th movement. What year was that? Between 62 and 63, more or less, and at the end of 63. And how were the rest of the 60s then? And well, did you realize that there was going to be a long war yet, or not? Well, yes. In 63, we already structured as rebel armed forces. We saw it wasn't easy because the enemy had a lot of armament, with planes to bomb, ships and tanks, and we only had light rifles. We had many failures, and at one point the comrades got tired, as they were military men. In the November 13th movement, Commanders Tulio Lima and the Commander Juan Sosa and the Commander Hernandez were involved. And Commander Hernandez, after 3 years of struggle, rebelled and returned to the army. He took 70 comrades who were soldiers. They were from the army, but had joined us, along with all the weapons and everything. So we were left with very few. Then, at that time, we already had several fronts. We had the Edgar Ibarra front, which was named after a university student that the army had killed. The Edgar Ibarra front was created. We kept fighting there. Afterwards, there was a little bit of nonconformity within the same organization of the FARC. For example, some believed that socialism must be applied in some other way, and others, well, were Democrats. They thought that the form of struggle was different, and we didn't agree. Some comrades withdrew, but in a short time they structured themselves in the PGT, in the EGP, the Guerrilla Army of the Poor. It breaks away from the FARC and structures another organization, which is the Guerrilla Army of the Poor, EGP. Well, and from there we continued. We continued because we were left a little weak, or quite weak, because it splits, we divide. And from there, the Guerrilla Army of the Poor and the FARC, another organization arises, which is the ORPA, Organization of People in Arms. That was due to the discrepancies within the same. We never achieved unity, or everyone understood their way of fighting or combating, well, in their own way. Some said that it was that there needed to be a massacre. But the FARC never agreed that there needed to be massacre because, unfortunately, the army forced the peasantry to collaborate with the army. Whether they wanted to or not, it was obligatory. So that's where each leader thought differently. They separated. And now we were 4 organizations. In fact, the PGT never moved away. So now we have the PGT led by Commander González, then the Guerrilla Army of the Poor by Moran, and the Orpa by Gasparilon. Gasparilon was the son of Miguel Ángel Asturias, the Nobel Prize winner of the... yes, of course. Yes, exactly. Well, so 4 organizations. We reached a moment when the army almost annihilated us. So, with other help and contributions from other leaders and from other countries, well, we were given the idea that it was better to fight for unity. So, the General Command began to hold sessions to regroup us into a single front. And it wasn't easy. We had to negotiate for 4 years to be able to form a single front, which was the URNG. That wasn't formed until 1982. Then we synchronized the movements. For example, the Orpa attacked in San Marcos, Huehuetenango, and the Guerrilla Army of the Poor attacked in El Quiché, Cobán, Alta Verapaz, and us, the FAR, the Department of Petén, and part of Alta Verapaz, as well as the South Coast. And what, at that time, what did you think, or what did the unity think? What was the objective? What we thought was, for example, if we'd taken power through arms, it was to change the country's system. To change the system, because the system is what is favoring only the dominant sector or the big corporations.
Las grandes corporaciones a nivel internacional.
At the international level. But it was not possible to take power due to the divisionism that we maintained. We did cover then what the 4 organizations began to negotiate to structure ourselves. The URNG, Guatemalan National Revolutionary Unity, was structured in 82. The General Command of the URNG was structured in 1986. Then we were able to advance more, because when we attacked, we synchronized at the time of the moment of the attack, the hour, and everything. If on Wednesday, January 16th, let's say, we attack in Huehuetenango, we attack on the 15th, we attack in Cobán, we attack in Petén. So the army was dislocated a little. They would go one way, we would attack from another. They would go another way, we would attack. So they said, what did we do? What did they do? We didn't realize there are many. We were the same quantity, but we synchronized. And that's how the army was dislocated. And some countries trying to find mechanisms on how to sign a peace agreement. That took us 10 years. The URNG General Command was structured in 1986. It was negotiated 10 years, so the peace accords weren't signed until 1996, on December 29th, 1996. For you, what was your experience of those decades? How was life and starting a family? Where did you live in the 60s, in the 70s? It's quite complex, because living under pressure is complex. Life is very tense, but when one fights for conviction, all that can be overcome. We were able to overcome it. What place did you live at that time? No, nowhere. We walked, for example, because we didn't last more than 3 days in a camp. 3 days here, 3 days ahead, 3 days, and at the end of everything, each camp had its names, and we do the routes on foot at night. Daybreak catches us, and we hide, and we keep walking. with the whole family? Not with the whole family, but only those who fight. The family was somewhere else. Somewhere else. But they also had to move? Yes. So when you did rise to a higher level then in the unit, what was your journey to get there? Well, after taking a course in Cuba, because thanks to the Cubans, they are very good at war and very good at training, I am a political military of the revolution. So already it's a 6-month course. What year were we talking about? I'm talking about 1964, more or less. Okay, already 20 years. Yes, 64. Yes. So I was appointed lieutenant. That's as far as I got, because from there up to captain, there can be in the guerrilla war. There are no colonels. There's nothing but corporals, sergeants, and those there are, and sub-lieutenants and lieutenants. And there are, so that there is no need to send more people abroad. But from what we learned, we teach them to defend yourself, to attack and to counterattack. But my most complex experience is one when one of the comrades himself, who was a guerrilla commander, betrayed us and sold out the army again and handed us over to the army. So at one point, the army ambushed us, and they knew where we were, and 13 comrades died in about 25 minutes. And the only survivor is me. Only one. Yes. So I, in order not to fall into the hands of the army, I threw myself into the water because I didn't fall into the Montagua River, but I fell onto the dry land. That's where I dislocated my right arm and leg. But night was already falling. Night already came. I threw myself into the river, swimming downstream, and they went upstream. When no comrade responded anymore, they began to shoot into the river with a machine gun and everything. I was way down there. When they stopped shooting, night fell. I crossed the Montagua River. I crossed the whole Montagua River. I crossed the Sierra de las Minas. I already knew the way perfectly well, and I arrived at Rabinal, about 18 kilometers from the town, and the house of the social base. They received me there. They went to hide me in a hill, under some cliffs, but no, I didn't receive healing. That's why I lost a lot of weight. I was 120 days without medicine. And this, a vein here swelled up, red. But then a column of comrades, they came to find me. They passed by, and the one from the base told them, "There's a comrade in there." But who is it? We don't. How come not 4 months ago? I was already very thin. My normal weight at 21 years old, my normal weight was 149, and when they found me at 120 days, I only weighed 68 pounds, all bone. Then, when my comrades found me, yes, I had received medical attention, and I recovered. So, they changed my job. Oh yes? I had to... At that time, I was put in charge of logistics. We always carried weapons, but just short weapons. Okay, yes. I would enter the towns. I would enter to buy medicine, to buy clothes, black suits. We never used white or red, only black. Because the army can't see it. They can't detect it. And that's how we were filling, covering, contributing until the accords were signed. And I'm curious if those experiences made your heart, I don't know, break a little or harden more. Or how did you maintain your sense of humanity? Well, when a comrade fell, we tried to be more aggressive against the army, because when they inflict casualties on us, we feel it very strong. But when we inflict casualties on them, we go on the run, but not fleeing forever, but to attack again further on, to ambush them again, and to inflict casualties on them again. With 3 ambushes that we carry out in any confrontation, they despair and they leave. It was a time, perhaps in the 80s, you were talking about when the war was even harder, more violent. In the 80s, it was very violent, because unfortunately they told us to train many people. We trained them, and the armament never arrived. So grave error. It's a grave error. So a lot of people died because they couldn't defend themselves. It is the time when the weapons, it seems, the weapons from outside arrived in even larger quantities than before from the states, from Israel. No, they never arrived in large quantities to us. No, I'm talking about the government. Oh yes, oh God. No, the government had the support of Taiwan. Also, the support of Israel and the United States. Yes, that's why the massacres were committed in Guatemala. 668 massacres were committed in Guatemala with the strategic coordination of the Israel, Taiwan, and the United States, plus the strategies and tactics of the Guatemalan army. And also, at that time, the president was Lucas Garcia from here in Fray. Yes, here in Fray, many people also died here. Well, they didn't capture them by day, but by night. They would take them out and kill them just for diesel. No, they never had irrefutable proof to say. They never killed armed people, but unarmed people. What do you think is the reason that explains the reputation of that president, which is still around here positive, that he did things for Fray? People often tell me, what can explain a reputation like that when we know what he did? Yes, precisely. Since there are people who did not live it, because most of the people were brought from the outside and they created a pilot plan. So they are not locals, but other people they brought from the outside, and the ones who are here. So they were unaware of the true reality, and they never read history. And after that, President Riuzman later, how did things change? Or not? They just kept going. The same. He followed. It was worse. Worse it was. Worse because it was during the time of the General Riuzman, because the Rifles and the Beans project was created. What is that? It is a project that they called the Rifle and Beans Plan. And what was the objective of that? Well, the massacres and everything. They would give provisions to the people, and only so that they would gather, and then right there, they killed them. Oh, how intense. They relied on the military commissioners and the self-defense groups. And you didn't despair at that time? No. Well, there was no way to despair, because since Since the reality is one that has to maintain calm in a situation of that nature, if that despair grips you, you can attack and know the conditions are not right to respond formally. So we always carried short-range weapons, or now, when the M16s and the AK-47s and the G3 fall into our hands, for example, well, that goes 2,000 meters. But they with tanks and their planes? So there you did have to be hard-hearted and very intelligent to be able to survive that in that situation. Among all that, what year did you meet your wife? Well, I met her when they were also from the social base of the FAR. They lived in the south coast and later moved to this area. We met here when I was already operating in logistics. And when you were traveling a lot, I imagine, yes, the areas that were under my responsibility were the entire northern transversal belt, which starts from Morales, Isabel, to this mountain range and up to Playa Grande. And was she at one time threatened, or did she suffer problems with violence? No. There came a moment when it wasn't just her, but my whole family, because they were small. It turns out that a comrade had a baby under the mountain, but since the confrontations were very frequent, and she got sick, and then they had to look for her so that she would give birth to the child, and we adopted him as a son. But the army, since an individual who was called Chepe Chaquista, who was Kekchi, deserted and told the army that, yes, these people are supporting the guerrilla war and so on. And they called us. They called her several times, and they located themselves inside there. My children and everyone were threatened, but they always maintained calm in the situation. And it was when Serrano Elias had given the coup d'etat. So the captain said, look, 8 days is enough to finish them off. They had part of San Marcos, part of Huehuetenango, and here the municipality of Fray Bartolome de las Casas in red. And since there were confrontations everywhere with the heroic Panzos front, so yes, they were very annoyed, but thank God, well, they didn't find a way to annihilate us. Yes, how good. And did any of your children fight in the end then? All of my children, they fought in logistics. All of them fought in logistics. All of them from the oldest to the youngest. Really? The women also? Apart from one, my daughter, who was incorporated into the front of the heroic Panzos front. And did everyone survive? Everyone survived. And how do you explain that? Well, no, I repeat, it's the sanity, patience, humility, and being very honest. And the mouth, you have to watch your mouth a lot. I see, I don't see. I hear, I don't hear. I am mute. That's how one can live in the midst of tribulations, in the midst of everything. One can be... I don't pass judgment. I prefer not to. And how was it, after so much violence, and the worst in the 80s, that things reached a point of beginning the negotiations for the peace accords? What changed to open the door to the accords to make them possible. After signing the peace accords, before, what changed with so much violence? Getting worse up to Rios Mon, but soon after, a process of negotiation began. Well, the peace negotiations happened because, I repeat, we synchronized the time of attack. So they thought there were many of us. Well, they didn't know how many of us there were nationwide. We were the same quantity, but we were divided before. But with the unity, we synchronized the moment of attack. That's where the army gets dislocated and thinks there are many of us. And there weren't many of us. We were the same quantity, only that we had used a strategy of synchronizing the time, attacking at the same time, and at the same hour, the same day, the same month. So they thought there were many of us, and no, there were very few of us. On a national level, if I recall correctly, there were about 3,000. At the national level, among the four organizations, apart from the civilian population that supported, yes, of course, because a guerrilla cannot live without the support of the social base. The great benefit of joining forces to achieve this seems like a fundamental principle in life, perhaps. If you can join forces, you can achieve more. Yes. Yes, you can. Did you always believe in this? Yes. So, in your life, at that time, did you travel through other countries as well? Yes, of course. In 1963, I took the political military course in Cuba, and in 1964, I remember, I was sent to Germany. To East Germany. That's the communist Germany. Yes, when the Berlin Wall was still built. Also, the political military of 7 of us, well, only I am alive. The other comrades fell in combat. And other countries also afterwards, or just that? Well, the political military field, yes. But now, through the legal route, after the peace accords are signed, I was awarded a scholarship for 66 days. I took a course on the rule of law at Carlos III University of Madrid in Spain. And I have a friend who was a priest who was fighting with us, and I visit him in France. And how was that scholarship in Spain? There was an organization called INCIDE, the Civil Initiative for Democracy, and that moved my scholarship, and I was able to leave. So, is it fair to say that you always believed in democracy too? Was it always an objective inside? Of course. I believe in democracy, yes, but an authentic democracy, not the democracy that the American imperialism applies, because they apply a democracy that is in favor of their interests without caring who they're going to overthrow. The OAS, whose true spirit was created to maintain unity throughout Central America, however, 3-4 years later, they gave the coup d'etat to Jacobo Ángel Guzmán, and that is the democracy that they have applied in all countries. They overthrew Colonel Jacobo Ángel Guzmán. Afterwards, they killed this Omar Torrijos. They also overthrew him. They killed him. Then they killed Salvador Allende of Chile. And then they went to Iraq, to Libya. They tried with Syria too, that until now they managed to overthrow the government. But it has been a strategy of the American empire. And then after that, what was the process for you to become mayor here in Fray? Yes, precisely. After signing the peace accords, all the comrades went out on the horizon. They gave them land, they gave them money to live. Now, not me, because I thought about giving life to the party. Because if they persecuted me for many years, we fought for many years to get the party, I had to give it life. But if I had been there, I couldn't come to work here. So I preferred to lose the aid that I had supposedly earned in the 33 years or a little more, but to be alongside my people. Why? Because my people never moved away from me in the most difficult moments of the war. They didn't move away from me well, nor did I move away from them. And the proof of this, I won the elections because I worked the entire northern transversal belt. And thank God, our president didn't win, but I won, and I built roads, bridges, streets. All these streets were built by my municipal government. And that was my aim. That was my desire, to see development for everyone. Not just for one person, not just for me, but for my people. That was when the URNG converted to a political party? Exactly. It was in 98. Our party was registered as a legal party with legal status and everything. There was no longer persecution for us. And now we could talk about unity and what we dreamed of and why we fought a long struggle to see the common good of an entire people. And I won the elections with about 7,000 votes here in Fray. The first time? The first time. And I won the second time too. Yes, well, we'll talk about that later, but the first time, a little later, I met you. Yes, exactly. I arrived at the beginning of 2001. 2001, yes. And I still remember meeting you, and you told me there is space for everyone. Everyone, yes. I never forgot. So, a question on that topic. How did you manage to speak to everyone? Both sides. One could say, to recover a sense of unity among the entire people. How difficult was it? It was quite difficult. The only thing I did is to be a simple man. Only speak the truth. I never spoke of another party. I spoke of my party. Yes, I spoke of my party. And I never touched on religious matters. I didn't mix it up. Only the party itself. Precisely when we won the elections, there were blue helmets here. So, in my council, there was Catholic people and there were evangelical people. And so the evangelicals asked for a service at 10 in the morning and the Catholics a mass at 6 in the morning. We went and the blue helmets presented themselves there. And the priest tells me, the councilman went before me. He gave him the communion wafer. Are you Catholic, son? I am a Christian revolutionary. Oh, well, I can give it to you next time then. Well, so, there was a professional who was from the blue helmets, and they were international observers. Outside, coming out of the Catholic Church, she tells me, Ceferino, you are a rascal. Why is that, ma'am? Why, when we interview you, are you so slow to speak? And to the priest you said, I'm a Christian revolutionary. How did you manage to have the ability to say that quickly? Well, ma'am, I told her, I carry the revolution in my bloodstream. I live it, and that's why I fought for long years, and that's why I want to live more. To get projects for my people, now that I've won the municipal government in civilian life. No, she said, you have not convinced me. And your government also achieved the start of the Casa de la Cultura, which I helped a little at that time. And, well, the library and the theater and everything, the culture also rose in that time. We built the Casa de la Cultura in response to the canyons that were pointed at our town. I had a thought that in the time of war, and thank God he gave me the opportunity to govern in my municipality, what we want is the Casa de la Cultura to show the empire that it is not with weapons that you can convince the people, but with development, music, theater, boxing, and races, swimming, whatever can be done. Education. So that is in response to the cannons that pointed at our town. So the next election you lost, but I wasn't here. I had said goodbye to Fray at the end of 2003. What happened with that election? Well, what happened is the same comrades, for example, the refugees, because one has to reason what a refugee is and a demobilized person is. So they themselves were saying, look, he won with the support of the drug traffickers. He handled money, and I didn't handle the money to be able to win. I worked poorly, but a struggle for conviction, and I convinced the people that yes, it was possible to achieve development, but by everyone joining in, yes. So because of the same comrades, the same comrades are not visionaries, but they wanted power. But without power, without working, and power can be taken, but you have to work a lot. But the people reconsidered, and we returned. We won again 4 years later. So what was it, 2012 that you also won the election? In 2008 to 2012. There, yes. So you won that election, and also the type of development that you attempted the first time, you attempted the second time. To follow up, were there also some things that you would have liked to do that you didn't achieve at that time? Well, my plan was to take roads to all the communities, but no. Due to the period of time, it expired. I left 3 communities without roads. That is, Las Rocas is still without a road. Still, it is still without a road. And Chinamui, which already has a road now, and Ceferino now already has a small road. So there is one left without a road, and it is still there. 10 years later and more, still. And the Casa de la Cultura continues from what I see, and now there are a lot of schools too. Also, education was our plan. Education, health. And in my first term, we came to have 24 Cubans here. Cuban doctors. Doctors, yes, doctors. We financed 3 doctors. 3 doctors ourselves, and the state paid for 21. Because since the stipends small stipends that they earn, it's not a large salary like a doctor here in Guatemala. They are small stipends. We give them a little more because we know we are of the same line, and we know what is suffered in Cuba due to the embargoes that the empire has also imposed on them for more than 6 decades, more or less. The biggest difference, perhaps, well, a lot has changed, right? In the 20 years since I was here, the town is already bigger. It has grown a lot, too much. And that is what I want to ask you. When you see it now, how much has grown and how has it grown? And since the time when you also were mayor, What do you think about the development, the path that Fray is on? Is it on a good path from what you see, or would you like to see other things? Well, the truth is that being outside, one desires many things. For example, drinking water is very scarce. So, in this year, in this period of the Comrade Arnoldo, who was mayor, he gave me the opportunity to manage drinking water projects. We achieved about 22 mechanical wells managed in 3 parts. One part from the organization, another part from the community, and another part from the municipality. We achieved it. Now with this one, well, he doesn't take me into account, so I also step aside because one can contribute when given the opportunity. I understand. The other big change is the palma. Yes, exactly, the palma. Well, that was not managed by the municipal government, but that was negotiated by members of Congress. They already had come from the state with permission to work and everything. They never came to the municipality, whether they wanted to or not, but they already came with the right to do everything. And proof of this is that they knocked down the trees on the riverbank. It did not respect anything. There is a law in the political constitution of the Republic that 50 meters belongs to the state along all water sources, lagoons, and rivers, and that must be protected. However, they violated it, but they are already authorized from there. I always remember an interview that we shared, but it was mostly with a woman from the States who was working in the capital with an NGO from a newspaper, but a good NGO. And she came to Fray to interview you about the FTAA. At that time, right? The agreements, as they are called, of free trade, of globalization and everything at that time. I remember that because you also told us that no one from the federal government has come here to ask for a word or a type of agreement from here of the municipality. It was only a word from outside. Exactly. It seemed the same then. There are some things that are still different agendas. Yes, for example, the 2014 agreement, as they call it, was the genetically modified seed law. That never came here, but it is a proposal from the big corporations. So what they want is to sell the seeds that they produce, and that the native seeds, which the peasants have maintained for more than 500 years here, be eliminated. So for that, we had to go on a 3-day strike in Congress to partially stop it. And they changed the name of that law. I don't remember exactly. With the privatization of water also. We had to go on strikes. Well, they haven't declared it, but they are privatizing most of the water sources. Really? Also. But that law against the genetically modified seed, because the genetically modified seed is very bad, that law, I already saw that the content says of the municipality. Well, you have to come and notify when you plant. A commission from the municipality goes out to see what quantity of work and what quantity of seed. If it's a little bit of seed, they pass along the report and they pass it to the court. Then the court calls the small-scale farmer who is going to plant because he has a lot of land to plant and has a little seed, and they show him that he is not obeying the law. Then they applied a fine of 10,000 quetzales plus 4 years in prison. Yes, it has been interesting because when I talk to people of all types in the town, right, this time everyone talks about the African palm in terms that they understand, well, the contamination, the use of water and everything. And they despair a little, right? And it's interesting because in the When I was here 20 years ago, it was a bigger challenge to raise awareness among people about environmental issues. But with the African palm, it seems that everyone understands the consequences and also the resources. Yes, employed, but the costs as well. And they regret it, from what I hear. Of course. Is that what you hear from the people too? Or do you hear other things that the people think about the African palm these days? No, it is that regularly our people are not prepared to manage to reason or understand this grievance that the African palm brings to the population. For example, they deduce that the African palm has a life of 25 years, and if in 25 years what will become of the municipality of Fray, or what will become of Guatemala, the areas where the African palm has been cultivated, because since it absorbs a lot of water, a lot of liquid, so who knows, right? But our people, they think about the present, that they are earning, that they have a job, but it doesn't go beyond that. So that is what will become of the generations to come. Will the 3,000 workers there now have African palm to work? Really, 3,000? From outside Fray or from Fray? Both. But if I oppose, then we have made enemies of those poor people who need to work. So it is better to keep silent, to be intelligent. Right? Because people are poor. They need work. There is no source of work. There are even professionals working in there as laborers. It's complex. When a son of yours, my friend, who tried to maintain the law that says there is an area next to the rivers that must be protected, yes, and he encountered problems. Quite a lot of problems. And intimidation, exactly, that you know well from your experience. So what do you say at this time to a son? To continue, or no, maybe advise him that the conditions are not right to oppose because you need work. Where are you going to work? Or they send you to be killed. Who is going to defend you? Who is going to feed your family? It's complex. So here you have to be intelligent. There is no other way, because a single swallow does not make a summer. The whole town has to grow. It has to create awareness to be able to advance in that field. It cannot be done. It is fighting against the current. It's fighting against the current. And you still say, well, at the beginning of this talk, you said that you were always optimistic. Yes. And you still don't despair. No. How do you feed your sense of optimism? What reasons or what kind of thinking do you have to be able to maintain that belief? The faith in the people. Maintain the equilibrium. When I talk about being optimistic, I maintain the equilibrium. Emotionally, physically, because when losing the equilibrium, then you get agitated, and you get agitated in vain. I get agitated, and it is in vain, because fighting with against a monstrous enemy, these are large corporations from several countries, and they have everything to win, nothing to lose. What am I going to do? Well, when an opportunity arises, there are people who talk, but they only come and take the message over there with them. So when you have a son who looks for work, your father, he is our enemy. He talks about us. Then one causes harm to a third party. So better, the conditions are not right. That's why the commander Che Guevara said, when a man's conscience matures, leadership emerges and changes occur. Not now. The conditions are not right. They are not right. On one hand, I think that today, after so much time, the conditions are still not right. On one hand, I think this. On the other hand, I see your experience, your life. You achieved so much through such a difficult, violent time and everything. But you managed to be mayor and to do a lot of things and live until 80 years old with a good health and a beautiful family, and everyone is here. And something else. Something else. Yes. The greatest achievement I have reached is being alive. Yes. And having my family. There are 9 in total, and we are all complete. So, in one way, it is, well, there are several realities that exist at the same time. There are some that, well, one can despair a little when seeing the forests already, when seeing the African palm from its plants in the Nueva Libertad to the mountains. I couldn't believe it. Really, so much land. But on the other hand, there is you're saying there is a bigger perspective. Yes. And you believe in this? Yes, I trust in that. Intuition. Has intuition helped you in your life? Or more thought? Strategy? Or both? Both things, right? Both things. I'm curious about intuition because it's talked about less generally, right? What is your experience of intuition and how does it help you? Well, in many fields, for example, since this has no end, and it is not a coincidence, but it is almost worldwide. I cannot think only of Fray Bartolome de las Casas, yes? To begin with, in Fray, there are 78 communities without electric power. However, the government, when it makes loans to the state, it deduces that 90% of the country of Guatemala has electric energy, has a health center, has a community outreach center. And it's true. It has a health center, but without medicine, without doctors. So we fall into the same thing. If we think first of the negative, we do not manage to overcome or to maintain the equilibrium. So there is no other option than to continue the struggle, but in an intelligent way. In an intelligent way. You cannot run. You run, you get tired quickly, and you don't reach the destination. That's more or less where my idea goes. Very well. And do you have a spirituality? Do you believe in God? Yes. And a religion? Also, I'm evangelical. Do you have thoughts about what happens after death, or still you don't think about it? Well, it's good to think because that's part of preparing for the equilibrium. So yes, there can be, it's said that there is something beyond, but well, it's a matter of seeing, of waiting for the moment. Waiting, yes. Well, Don Ceferino, I always end my talks with people here talking about music. I'm curious, is there a music for your life? Perhaps it has accompanied you in your life, a music or a group or something. An instrument? Yes. The guitar is what I have liked. Really. I love listening to the marimba. I tried to learn, but the marimba, you have to make a group of 5 or 7 or more people, and we never got together. So I liked the guitar better because even if I'm alone, I grab my guitar and I play. I have it inside. There. Can you play now? Yes, I can. Wow, that's very good. It's a little out of tune. Okay, let's see. Do you want lemonade? Oh, thank you, man. My favorite, you know. And the current president was a surprise, right? That he was elected. Yes. And what did you think about that? Well, he has good intentions. Yes, it seems so. He does. Because the father was the one who, Dr. Juan Jose Arevalo Bermejos, who created the labor code, the EECs, and other benefits. The problem for him that he is handcuffed by Casif, the powerful force that has really kept up. They are steering him. If he does not align himself, he will die. And he does not want to die. So a true leader has to be born who has the courage to die so as not to be subjected to being manipulated. He has good ideas, but they do not let him, nor will they let him. It's true. If he comes out alive, he is lucky. The conditions you spoke of, right? Exactly. The music? Very good.
Sí, ¿sabes, Bonnie?
Sí.
There you go. Don Ceferino. It is a great pleasure. Truly. Thank you, my brother. Thanks for stopping by and seeing us. Thank you for coming. You know you have a friend here. As long as there is life, there will be revolution.
That was Don Ceferino de Paz González, at home in Fray Bartolome de las Casas, Alta Verapaz, Guatemala, Central America, with thanks to Doña Luz as well for a wonderful lunch afterwards, and the whole family for the warmest of return welcomes. Enormous thanks also, once again, to Dana Scott for the translated audio, and of course, to you supporting listeners for making the episode possible. This week, special thanks to Martin Pell, Simon Alston, Deirdre, and Manny Pascalini. Thanks so much for notching up your 3rd anniversary of support. If you'd like to join us, be part of a great community, get some exclusive stuff, and help keep the show going, that'd be awesome. Just head to the website or the show notes and follow the prompts. The music you're hearing is Regeneration by Amelia Barden. My name's Anthony James. Thanks for listening.